Welcome and thank you for joining us for the second half hour of The Factor Uncensored tonight. One of the Supreme Court's latest rulings could be beneficial in protecting people from domestic violence. The court has ruled in favor of upholding restrictions for domestic violence offenders. This means it is illegal for people under domestic violence restraining orders to buy or own a gun. Now, the court ruling 8-1 with Chief Justice John Roberts calling it, quote, common sense. Justice Clarence Thomas was the only dissenter. Joining us to talk about this, Fort Bend County Sheriff Eric Fagan, domestic violence survivor Jamie Wright, and the CEO of Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse, Maisha Coulter. Glad to have you all here on The Factor Uncensored. So, Jamie, let's begin with you as a survivor. What does this mean?
This means relief and just a enormous amount of gratitude that the people that are able to protect me, protect survivors that are still suffering in silence. It means a lot. It means that they heard our cry. They're not only concerned about our safety, but concerned about public safety as a whole.
And of course, when you are a victim of domestic violence, one of the key things you're worried about is your life ending. And of course, there's always a gun to think about, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That is the major fear, absolutely, that I or other survivors won't live another day to see our grandchildren, to see our children, to go to work, to serve our community, absolutely.
Ms. Coulter, your thoughts on this, and is this an important ruling for those who are trying to survive and not be a victim, not become a statistic in the domestic violence arena?
Yeah, it is a relief, and it is an important ruling. So all they did, though, is uphold the law that existed before the Fifth Circuit turned it around. Essentially,
but we've seen this court turn a lot of things around.
Absolutely, and that's why we who are in the advocate space were very much concerned and on pins and needles. We were advocating for a good decision, a good outcome, signing amicus briefs, doing everything that we could to raise the awareness about why this ruling will matter. But yeah, so 70% of all survivors, victims of domestic abuse succumb to their intimate partner through a gun. All of the people who were killed in 2022 in Texas, 70% of them were killed at the hands of an abuser with a gun. 35% of them had a protective order, a civil protective order, granted in their favor. So the person was not supposed to have a weapon. We have laws on the books for the last 20 years that say when you get a protective order granted in your favor, that person is supposed to surrender their gun to the court or to a system. 254 counties exist in Texas. Only 10 have an actual gun surrender process at all. So the problem is not just the fact that people should not have guns in their hands, but we also should be advocating that when they are ruled against, when an order is made in a court that this person has been violent, they shouldn't have a weapon, we need to be able to take those weapons from those individuals.
And Sheriff, when you have a ruling like this that directly impacts you guys in law enforcement, do you do a refresher with your deputies saying, look, now here's the law, keep this in mind. If you run across a domestic violence person who has assaulted someone, should you check them for weapons and ask them the question, do you have a weapon if you are under a restraining order?
Yes, we have constant training with the officers on all new legislations that come out. This legislation is going to save lives. 70 women a month in the U.S. are killed by the hands of an individual with a gun in an intimate situation, their intimate partners. 70 a month. The National Coalition of Domestic Violence says if there's a gun present in a domestic violence situation, the risk of homicide is 500 times more likely. In Fort Bend, just a few months ago, a family was slaughtered by an individual that was on a protective order. He went back to that house and killed 5 individuals. Out of those 5 individuals, a 6-year-old baby was also shot and killed.
Do you ask yourself in the last couple of seconds we have here, How did that happen? How did he slip through the cracks?
We ask that question every day. Every day. It's something that we have to work on constantly. Work with organizations such as them, having them come in to speak to officers, what we're doing here in Fort Bend now, working with the DA, working with counselors to educate law enforcement.
We'll be right back and we'll continue this conversation after the breaks. And let's take a look at these disturbing numbers. 1 out of 4 women will suffer abuse in their lifetime. Our guests are back here, and an estimated 4,000 women die each year from domestic violence. 1 in 4, as we said, will suffer abuse in a lifetime. Our guests are back here on The Factor. When we talk about not having a gun if there is a restraining order, your next point is what?
If they shouldn't have a gun, then how do we get it from them? Because we know that they have them. So when judges are hearing these cases and issuing out an order saying that they should not be able to use or have a gun in their possession for the duration of time that the protective order exists, what then is next? Do they bring it to the court? Do they take it to the sheriff? What happens? And so without that also happening, people are still unsafe. This same person who took this case all the way to the Supreme Court kept his gun after the court ordered him to surrender it. And that's the problem. We have no way to enforce the aspect of the law that says you shouldn't have one.
And a gun is a very personal thing to some people, and they're not willing to give it up. And so, Sheriff, when you hear that, obviously you guys will likely be the first line of defense. If there's another domestic call between that couple and this person is under a restraining order, when you get there and you realize this suspect, and it's the most dangerous time for law enforcement when you guys respond to this, but when you get there and you find out this guy has a gun, what's done next?
It should be immediate surrender. We confiscate that gun and place it in the property room. Now, the individual does have the right to appeal it. Or to say that you don't have the right to take that gun, but we have that right because of that order to take that gun away, and that's up to that individual to go back through the court system to try to get that gun. But we have to do something. I would like to see immediate gun removal inside the court. We have to come up with some type of program when they're in front of their judge to have a deputy or a law enforcement agency there to make them release that gun.
Well, prior to the ruling, Harris County did have a gun surrender, and because of this ruling, it was suspended. So the protective order
hopefully
court,
will come back.
will hopefully resume.
And Jamie, do you think ultimately this will save some lives? Obviously, we know some people will keep their guns. There's nothing you can tell them or do to get it away from them. But do you think this will save some lives?
Absolutely, and not only for the survivors. I was just reminded, like you said, one of the most dangerous calls our law enforcement faces, it was when they come out to protect us. So absolutely lives will be saved, absolutely.
And for those who are wondering if they know someone has a gun, can they call and report it?
Absolutely, yeah. They should absolutely call. Either the survivor herself knows
What
that
if
that
you get
victim...
no response? Because in some agencies, I mean, there are some big city agencies, and they're like,
yeah, the volume is large.
Yeah.
The court that issued the protective order has the right to assess that person, so they have compliance hearings. If an individual was under that court and they say protective order is granted, you can't have a weapon, they can go back to that court, and judges have the right to enforce their own orders. So there is a way to get the court involved.
We want to thank you all for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored. Very important information.